The crosshairs trembled slightly as Commander Maya Reid adjusted her grip on the Barrett M82 sniper rifle. Through her scope, she watched the heavily guarded compound nestled in the mountains of Azovistan, a small breakaway republic that most countries didn't officially recognize. Somewhere inside that fortress was Eli Harrison, the president's son, held captive for 47 days. One shot would determine whether he lived or died. Whether Maya got redemption or joined the long list of disgraced special operators who never found their way back. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Maya wasn't supposed to be here. Not after what happened in Damascus. Not after she'd been stripped of her rank, her team, and her future. But sometimes the people who shouldn't be anywhere are exactly the ones who need to be everywhere. The wind picked up, sending dust swirling across the barren landscape. Maya made a slight adjustment to her scope. 600 meters below, in the courtyard of the stone fortress, 4 guards patrolled with military precision while 2 more manned the watchtowers. Intelligence suggested another dozen inside, all heavily armed. All with orders to execute the hostage at the first sign of an American rescue operation. Command. This is Nightshade, she whispered into her secure comms. In position and awaiting authorization. Static crackled in her ear. Then the voice she'd been dreading. Nightshade, this is Director Harlow. You are not authorized to be there. Return to extraction point immediately. Maya's jaw tightened. Same old Harlow, same bureaucratic mindset that had gotten her kicked out of Delta Force 6 months ago. Sir, with respect, we have a clean window. The target is confirmed on site, and I have visuals on all external security positions. Commander Reid, may I remind you that you're no longer commander of anything? Harlow's voice dripped with contempt. You were explicitly ordered not to pursue this operation. The diplomatic channels are working. Maya almost laughed. Diplomatic channels? The same channels that had failed for 47 days, while the president's son was tortured for propaganda videos. The same channels that had prohibited any military rescue because Azovistan was technically still part of a country America couldn't afford to offend. Sir, they're moving him tomorrow. We lose him then. Maya kept her voice steady, professional. Like she was still the decorated special operator who'd completed 38 high-risk extractions without a single casualty. Not the woman who'd been court-martialed because she refused to let 6 American aid workers die when politics said she should. That's a risk we have to take. The president himself has ordered. The president doesn't know I'm here, Maya interrupted. And we both know he can't officially sanction this mission. That's why I'm doing it unofficially. The line went silent. Maya knew what Harlow was thinking. If she succeeded, the administration would quietly welcome their victory. If she failed, they'd disavow any knowledge of her actions. A disgraced former operator going rogue. No connection to official policy. Maya. Harlow's voice softened slightly, using her first name for once. If you do this and anything goes wrong, there's no extraction, no support, no recognition. You'll either die there or spend the rest of your life in prison. I'm aware of the stakes, sir. Maya's finger rested lightly on the trigger guard. But I'm going in. With or without your blessing. Another long pause. For the record, Commander, I'm ordering you to stand down. Noted, sir. And off the record. Harlow sighed. He's in the eastern wing. 2nd floor. Room with the blue door. 4 guards inside, rotating shifts. Maya allowed herself a small smile. Thank you, sir. I'll deny this conversation ever happened. Harlow out. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The sun was setting behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the compound. Maya checked her watch. 20 minutes until full darkness. That's when she'd make her move. Not with the sniper rifle. That was just for reconnaissance. This mission required something more subtle. Getting in, getting the package, getting out, all without anyone realizing an American had ever been there. Maya thought back to the day everything had changed. 6 months ago, she'd been commanding an elite team on a routine extraction mission in Damascus. 6 American aid workers trapped when fighting erupted between government forces and insurgents. Standard operating procedure: get in, get the civilians, get out, without engaging unless absolutely necessary. Then came the order that made no sense. Stand down, Commander. Diplomatic solutions are being pursued. Maya had watched through her scope as government forces moved toward the building where the aid workers were hiding. She'd seen enough operations go wrong to know what would happen next. "Sir, those aid workers have minutes, not hours," she'd radioed back. "Those are your orders, Commander. State Department is handling this." She'd made her choice then, just as she was making it now. 6 Americans saved. Career over. Dishonorably discharged for willful disobedience of direct orders. And recklessly endangering international relations. The fact that all 6 aid workers had made it home alive somehow never made it into the official report. The memory burned, but Maya pushed it aside. Focus on the now. The mission. The president's son. 23 years old. Harvard graduate. Kidnapped while working with a humanitarian organization. According to intelligence, he'd been beaten regularly but was still alive. Still valuable as a bargaining chip, Maya checked her equipment one last time. Silenced MP7 submachine gun. 2 backup Glock 19s. Combat knife. Encrypted radio. Night vision goggles. Lightweight body armor beneath her nondescript black clothing. Nothing that could identify her as American military. Nothing that could trace back to her government if things went sideways. She'd studied the compound for 3 days, memorized the guard rotations, identified the blind spots in their security, found the ancient drainage tunnel that wasn't on any official blueprints, planned 7 different escape routes, contingencies for contingencies. But plans rarely survived first contact. Maya knew that better than most. 23 hostage extractions in active war zones had taught her that success wasn't about having a perfect plan. It was about perfect adaptation when the plan inevitably failed. Darkness fell completely, and Maya moved. She abandoned her sniper position, stashing the rifle in a predetermined location. If she made it back, she'd retrieve it. If not, it would rust into nothing, just another piece of abandoned hardware in a region that had seen too many wars. She moved silently down the rocky slope, her footsteps making no sound as she approached the compound's outer perimeter. The night vision gave everything an eerie green glow, but Maya was so accustomed to it that it felt more natural than daylight. The drainage tunnel was exactly where her source had promised, a narrow opening partially concealed by scrub brush, just outside the compound's southern wall. Maya paused, listening for any sign that the entrance was guarded or monitored. Nothing. Just the distant sounds of the guards at the main gate, talking quietly among themselves. She slipped into the tunnel, the tight space immediately pressing in around her. The air was damp and stale, thick with the smell of mold and earth. Maya moved forward on her elbows and knees, careful not to make any sound that might echo up through the drainage system. 50 meters in, she reached the grate that separated the external drainage from the compound's internal system. This was the first real test. If the grate was newer or stronger than intelligence suggested, the entire mission would end here. Maya examined it carefully. Rusted iron, probably installed decades ago when the compound was first built as a regional governor's mansion. She applied pressure at specific points, testing its strength. Then, satisfied it would give way without too much noise, she braced herself and pushed. The grate broke free with a muffled crack that seemed deafening in the enclosed space. Maya froze, listening for any reaction from above. 10 seconds. 20. Nothing. She continued forward. The tunnel widened slightly as it connected to the compound's internal drainage system. Maya consulted her mental map. 20 meters north would bring her to an access point in the compound's central courtyard, too exposed. 15 meters east would lead to the kitchen area, potentially occupied even at this hour. But 10 meters west should open into a maintenance room in the compound's older section, likely unused at night. She chose west, crawling through increasingly narrow space until she reached another grate. This one was set into the ceiling of the tunnel. Above it, if her intelligence was correct, was the maintenance room. Maya listened carefully. No movement. No sounds. She pushed gently on the grate, and, to her relief, it lifted easily. Peering cautiously into the darkness above, she confirmed the room was empty, just cleaning supplies and old equipment gathering dust. She pulled herself up and out of the tunnel, closing the grate behind her. For a moment she simply stood still, allowing her senses to adjust to the new environment. The compound was quieter than she expected. Either security was more lax than intelligence suggested, or something was wrong. In Maya's experience, when things seemed easier than anticipated, it usually meant you were walking into a trap. She drew her silenced MP7 and moved toward the door, pressing her ear against it before gently testing the handle. Unlocked. Maya eased it open a crack, revealing a dimly lit corridor beyond. Empty. She slipped through and gently closed the door behind her. According to her intel, the eastern wing was accessible through a central hallway, then up a flight of stairs. 2 guards should be posted at the base of those stairs, another 2 patrolling the upper floor. Maya moved silently through the corridor, her footsteps making no sound on the stone floor. She reached the central hallway and paused at the corner, using a small tactical mirror to check around it without exposing herself. The staircase was there, just as expected, but only 1 guard stood at its base, not 2. Either the intelligence was wrong, or routines had changed. Neither option was comforting. Maya assessed the situation quickly. 1 guard meant less immediate resistance, but also raised questions about where the second guard might be. Had schedules changed? Was there a patrol she hadn't accounted for? No time to reconsider the entire approach. She had to move. Maya reached into her pocket and removed a small device, a modified flashbang grenade designed for close quarters. No explosive component, just a powerful light and disorienting sound that would temporarily incapacitate without alerting the entire compound. She tossed it around the corner. The guard turned at the sound of it landing, confusion registering on his face for the split second before Maya looked away and the device activated. A muffled thump, a flash of light reflected on the stone walls. Maya moved instantly, rounding the corner as the guard staggered, temporarily blinded and deafened. She closed the distance in 3 quick steps, one hand clamping over his mouth, while the other delivered a precise strike to a pressure point on his neck. The guard slumped in her arms. Maya lowered him silently to the ground, quickly binding his wrists and ankles with zip ties and gagging him with a cloth. He'd be unconscious for about 20 minutes, hopefully enough time to complete the extraction. She moved up the stairs, MP7 at the ready. The upper hallway stretched in both directions. Eastern wing to the right. According to Harlow, the blue door. Maya moved cautiously, alert for the patrol that should be somewhere on this floor. 4 doors down, she saw it. Blue paint, faded and chipping, but unmistakable. 2 guards stood outside it, both armed with automatic rifles. Maya couldn't risk another flashbang. The sound might alert others even through the dampening technology. She needed a diversion, something to draw at least 1 guard away without raising general alarm. Maya reached into her pack and retrieved a small electronic device. When activated, it would emit sounds mimicking a radio squelching, followed by muffled voices, sounds that would suggest communication equipment requiring attention, but not an emergency. She placed it in an alcove at the far end of the hallway, set the timer for 30 seconds, then retreated to a recessed doorway closer to her target. The device activated. Both guards looked toward the sound, then at each other. After a brief exchange of whispers, one of them moved to investigate, leaving the other at his post. One-on-one odds were much better. Maya waited until the first guard had turned the corner, then moved. 3 silent steps brought her behind the remaining guard. 1 precise strike rendered him unconscious before he could react. Maya caught him as he fell, easing his body to the floor without a sound. She quickly secured him as she had the first guard, then moved to the blue door. Locked, as expected. She examined the lock. Simple mechanical, no electronic components. 30 seconds with her pick set and it gave way. Maya eased the door open, MP7 leading the way. The room beyond was dimly lit by a single bulb hanging from the ceiling. And there, sitting on a metal cot against the far wall, was Eli Harrison. He looked up as she entered, his face a mask of suspicion and fear. One eye was swollen shut, his lips split. His clothes were torn and dirty, but he was alive, and from a quick visual assessment, had no life-threatening injuries. "Who are you?" he whispered, his voice hoarse. "I'm your ride home," Maya replied, moving quickly to his side. "Can you walk?" Eli nodded slowly, then with more conviction. "Yes, they've kept me functional for the videos." "Good. We need to move fast." Maya checked the restraints binding his wrists to the cot's frame. Simple handcuffs. She made quick work of them with her picks. "Are you military?" Eli asked as she freed him. "Not anymore," Maya replied. "Now I'm just a concerned citizen with a particular set of skills." "My father didn't send you, did he?" Eli's question held a weight Maya couldn't fully decipher. "Let's just say this mission doesn't officially exist," she said, helping him to his feet. "Can you use a weapon?" Eli nodded. "Basic training before my deployment with the humanitarian mission." Maya handed him one of her backup Glocks. "Only if absolutely necessary. Our goal is to get out clean and quiet." She moved to the door, checking the hallway. Still clear, but that wouldn't last. The guard who'd gone to investigate the diversion would soon return, and the patrol was still unaccounted for. "We're going to move to the stairs, then down to the main floor," Maya explained quickly. "There's a maintenance room that connects to a drainage tunnel. It'll take us outside the compound perimeter." Eli nodded, his face suddenly showing more determination than fear. "Lead the way." They moved into the hallway, Maya in front, Eli close behind. They'd made it halfway to the stairs when Maya heard voices. The patrol was coming around the corner ahead. She grabbed Eli and pulled him into a recessed doorway, pressing them both against the wall as two guards walked past, deep in conversation. Maya held her breath, one hand on her weapon, the other signaling Eli to remain absolutely still. The guards passed without noticing them. Maya waited until they turned the corner, then moved again, faster now. They reached the stairs and started down. At the bottom, the guard Maya had first neutralized was still unconscious. They stepped past him and continued toward the maintenance room. 20 meters. 10. 5. A shout from behind them. The patrol had found their unconscious comrade. "Run!" Maya ordered, all pretense of stealth abandoned. They sprinted the final distance to the maintenance room door, bullets striking the wall beside them as they ducked inside. Maya slammed the door shut, quickly overturning a heavy metal cabinet to barricade it. It wouldn't hold for long, but they only needed a few moments. "The grate," she directed, pointing to the floor. "Pull it up." Eli complied while Maya provided cover, her MP7 aimed at the door as the first impacts shook it. The barricade held, barely. "Got it," Eli called, lifting the heavy grate. "Down you go," Maya ordered. "I'll be right behind you." Eli lowered himself into the drainage tunnel. Maya backed toward the opening, keeping her weapon trained on the door as it began to splinter under the guards. Assault. Just as the door gave way, she dropped into the tunnel, pulling the grate closed above her. Bullets pinged off the metal as she secured it from below. "Move," she told Eli, pushing him ahead of her down the narrow passage. 50 meters straight, then we're outside the wall. They crawled rapidly through the darkness, the sounds of pursuit fading behind them. The tunnel was tighter than Maya remembered, especially with two people navigating it in haste. "Almost there," she encouraged, as Eli's pace began to slow. "Don't stop now." They reached the exit, emerging into the cool night air just as shouts indicated their pursuers had figured out their escape route. "This way," Maya directed, leading Eli toward a rocky outcropping that would provide cover. "I have a vehicle stashed 2 kilometers east." They ran through the darkness, Maya constantly scanning for pursuit. The compound behind them had erupted into activity, floodlights sweeping the surrounding terrain, voices calling out orders. "They're mobilizing vehicles," Maya noted as they heard engines starting. "We need to reach the ravine before they get organized." They pushed forward, Eli keeping pace despite his weakened condition. Maya had to admit she was impressed. The president's son had more resilience than intelligence briefings had suggested. They reached the ravine, a deep, natural cut in the landscape that would mask their heat signatures from any infrared equipment the compound security might deploy. Maya led them along its bottom, moving east toward her extraction plan. "So you got kicked out of the military?" Quote. Eli asked between labored breaths as they climbed a particularly steep section. "Special Forces, technically," Maya replied, helping him up a rocky ledge. "Delta Force." "For what?" Maya paused, considering how much to share. "For making a call similar to this one. Rescuing people I was ordered to abandon." Eli was silent for a moment. "Thank you," he finally said. "For making that call again." Maya nodded but didn't respond. The gratitude felt good, but it didn't erase the bitterness of her discharge. Didn't change the fact that after this unsanctioned mission, she might face criminal charges rather than reinstatement. They continued in silence for another kilometer, the sounds of pursuit growing more distant as the compound's search pattern focused in the wrong direction. Finally, they reached a small clearing where Maya had concealed an old Land Rover beneath camouflage netting. She quickly uncovered it, checking for any signs of tampering before gesturing Eli inside. "Satellite phone," she said, handing him a device from her pack as she started the engine. "Call this number. It's a direct line to someone who can arrange your official extraction once we reach the border." Eli took the phone but hesitated. "What about you? You're coming back too, right?" Maya focused on navigating the difficult terrain, not meeting his eyes. "My mission was to get you out. What happens to me isn't important." "It is to me," Eli insisted, "and it will be to my father. Once he knows what you did." "Your father can't know what I did," Maya cut him off. "Not officially. This mission never happened. I was never here. That's the only way this works politically." Eli fell silent, understanding dawning on his face. "They set you up to take the fall if things went wrong." "No one set me up," Maya corrected. "I volunteered, eyes wide open." "Why? After they already discarded you once?" Maya kept her eyes on the rough path ahead, navigating around obstacles by the vehicle's dim lights. "Because it was the right thing to do. And because sometimes the people who aren't supposed to be anywhere are the only ones who can get things done." They drove in silence for several minutes, putting distance between themselves and the compound. Maya constantly checked the mirrors, alert for signs of pursuit, but the night remained quiet. Too quiet, perhaps. "We'll reach the border crossing in about an hour," she finally said. "There's a contact there who will help you transition to official custody. Once that happens, the story becomes that local resistance fighters freed you and delivered you to the border. I disappear from the narrative." "That's not right," Eli protested. "It's how it has to be," Maya replied firmly. "Your father can't be connected to an unauthorized military operation in Azovistan. The diplomatic fallout would be catastrophic." "So you risk everything and get nothing?" Maya almost smiled. "I get to know I did what needed doing. Sometimes that has to be enough." The road ahead widened slightly as they approached what passed for a main route in this remote region. Maya slowed, checking for other vehicles before merging onto the unpaved track. Just as she accelerated again, headlights appeared around a bend ahead, coming toward them fast. Too fast for a civilian vehicle on these roads at night. "Get down," Maya ordered, pushing Eli's head below the dashboard as she killed their lights and veered off the road. The approaching vehicle, a military-style jeep with mounted equipment, sped past their position without slowing. Maya watched in the mirrors as it continued toward the compound. "That was close," Eli said as he straightened up. "Too close," Maya agreed, frowning. "And they shouldn't be coming from that direction." She made a quick decision, turning the Land Rover around. Change of plans. That border crossing might be compromised. "Where are we going instead?" "There's another way out, through the mountains. Longer, more difficult terrain, but less likely to be watched." Maya accelerated, taking a narrow side track that branched away from the main road. It'll add a few hours, but better safe than captured. The new route took them higher into the mountains, along goat paths barely wide enough for the vehicle. Maya drove with intense concentration, navigating by memory and the faint illumination of stars and a quarter moon. "You've planned for everything, haven't you?" Eli observed after they'd been climbing for nearly an hour. "Planning keeps you alive," Maya replied, "but so does knowing when to abandon the plan." The steep mountain track narrowed to barely the width of their vehicle, forcing Maya to navigate with absolute precision. One wrong move could send them plunging hundreds of meters down the rocky slope. She drove with the practiced focus of someone who had spent years in environments where mistakes meant death. "We're approaching the highest pass," she told Eli. "Once we're over it, the descent is easier. 2 more hours to the alternate border crossing." Eli nodded, his face pale in the dim dashboard light. Despite his brave front, Maya could see exhaustion taking its toll. The weeks of captivity, the stress of escape, and now this grueling journey were pushing his endurance to its limits. "Tell me about yourself," Maya said, hoping conversation would keep him alert. "Beyond what was in your file." Eli looked surprised. "You read my file?" "Of course. Background, education, previous travel, psychological assessment." Standard prep. Maya navigated around a fallen boulder. "But files don't tell the whole story." Eli was silent for a moment. "I was trying to prove something," he finally said. "Everyone thinks I'm just the president's son, that everything I have was handed to me." "So you went to one of the most dangerous regions in the world to work with a humanitarian organization." "Sounds stupid when you put it that way," Eli admitted. "Not stupid," Maya corrected. "Naive, maybe, but good intentions." "What about you?" Eli asked. "What led you to Delta Force? Not exactly a common career path for women." Maya kept her eyes on the treacherous road. "I grew up in a military family. Father, grandfather, 2 brothers, all served. But they expected me to be the one who stayed home, had kids, worried about everyone else on deployment." "And you had other ideas?" "I wanted to be the one people worried about," Maya said with a slight smile. "Turned out I was good at it. Very good." "Until Damascus?" The smile faded. "Until Damascus." They crested the mountain pass, the Land Rover straining against the steep gradient. The view opened before them, endless mountains stretching toward a distant border, and beyond that, safety. "We'll make it," Maya said, more to herself than to Eli. The headlights suddenly illuminated a roadblock ahead, tree trunks and boulders strategically placed across the narrow path. Maya braked hard, bringing the vehicle to a stop 50 meters short of the obstruction. "That's not natural," she said quietly, scanning the surrounding rocks and trees. Her instincts screamed danger. "Bandits?" Eli suggested. "Maybe. Or someone knew we'd take this route." Maya reached for her weapon. "Stay in the vehicle." Before she could exit, gunfire erupted from the rocks above them. Bullets pinged off the Land Rover's frame as Maya threw the vehicle into reverse, backing rapidly away from the ambush. "Get down!" she shouted as the windshield shattered. Eli ducked below the dashboard as Maya continued the blind reverse, navigating by memory along the narrow track they'd just ascended. A bullet struck her left shoulder, the impact spinning her against the door. Pain flared, hot and immediate, but Maya kept her focus on the road, on escape. Training took over. Pain was information, not an obstacle. "You're hit," Eli said, seeing the blood spreading across her shirt. "Just a graze." Maya lied, knowing it was worse. "We need distance." She managed to reverse 200 meters before the terrain forced her to stop. The gunfire had ceased, but Maya knew it was temporary. They'd be pursued. "We can't go back the way we came," she said, assessing their options. "And we can't go forward. We need to abandon the vehicle and move on foot." "You're bleeding," Eli protested. "I'll manage." Maya pulled a first aid kit from her pack. "Help me with this, then we move." Eli proved surprisingly competent, cleaning and bandaging her wound with steady hands. The bullet had passed through muscle, missing bone and major vessels. Painful, but survivable. "Where did you learn field medicine?" Maya asked as he finished. Part of the humanitarian training, Eli replied. Basic trauma care. Maya nodded approvingly. Grab everything useful from the vehicle. Water, food, the satellite phone. Leave the rest. They worked quickly, transferring essential supplies to their packs. Maya checked her weapons. MP7, the remaining Glock, extra magazines. The loss of blood had left her lightheaded, but she pushed through it, focusing on immediate priorities. There's a shepherd's hut about 3 kilometers east, she said, studying the topographical map by the light of a small tactical flashlight. As they approached the village, Maya's instincts heightened. Something felt wrong. The usual sounds of rural life, livestock, people working, children playing, were absent. It's too quiet, she whispered, signaling Eli to stop. They watched from concealment as a military convoy rolled through the village center. 3 vehicles bearing the insignia of Azovistan's defense forces. Not regular army, but the specialized border guard, known for their brutality and effectiveness. They're searching for us, Eli said quietly. Maya nodded. And they've deployed more resources than I anticipated. We need to change course. They backtracked, finding a route that added distance but kept them away from the village. The detour cost them precious time and energy, Maya's wound increasingly hampering her movement. By afternoon, dark clouds had gathered, bringing cold rain that soaked through their clothing. Maya welcomed the weather despite the discomfort. It would mask their trail and reduce visibility for any pursuers. They pushed on through the downpour, the terrain becoming treacherous with mud and swollen streams. Maya stumbled once, her injured shoulder unable to help maintain balance, and Eli caught her before she fell. We need to rest, he insisted. You're pushing too hard. We're still too close to that village, Maya argued. We need more distance. You won't make it to the border if you collapse from exhaustion or blood loss, Eli countered. I'm not leaving you behind. The determination in his voice surprised her. This wasn't the privileged, naive young man from the intelligence briefings. The weeks in captivity had changed him, hardened something inside him that education and wealth had previously insulated. 1 hour, Maya conceded. Then we keep moving regardless. They found shelter beneath a rocky overhang partially protected from the rain. Maya checked her wound, dismayed to find signs of infection setting in, the skin around the entry and exit points hot and red despite their earlier care. Eli noticed her concern. Fever? Not yet, Maya replied, but it's heading that way. He reached for the medical kit. We need antibiotics. Used the last dose this morning, Maya said. We'll manage without. Eli frowned but didn't argue. Instead, he helped her clean the wound again, applying the remaining antiseptic before rebandaging it. Tell me about your team, he said as they worked. The one you had before Damascus. Maya's expression softened slightly. The best operators I've ever known. We worked together for 3 years. 7 successful extractions in active conflict zones. 0 casualties. Do you stay in touch? No. The single word carried volumes of regret. After my discharge, contact was discouraged for their careers. They abandoned you? Eli sounded indignant on her behalf. They followed orders, Maya corrected. Can't blame them for that. Not when my whole case was about disobeying orders. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Maya had sacrificed her career to save lives, and in doing so lost the community that had defined her identity for years. What will you do after this? Eli asked. If we make it out? When we make it out, Maya corrected. And I don't know, probably disappear somewhere quiet. Private security work, maybe. What if there was another option? Eli's tone had changed, become more careful. What if my father could reinstate you? Maya gave a short, humorless laugh. Not possible. Too much political baggage. Maybe not as military, Eli pressed. But there are other agencies, other ways to serve. You're getting ahead of yourself, Maya said, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. Let's focus on getting you home first. We can worry about my career options later. The rain continued unabated as their rest period ended. They resumed their journey, moving more slowly now as Maya's condition deteriorated. The infection was advancing despite their best efforts, her body temperature rising as fever set in. By late afternoon, they had reached a critical decision point. Ahead lay the border, still 8 kilometers distant across increasingly open terrain. Behind them, almost certainly, pursuit was closing in. We need to move after dark, Maya decided. Less chance of being spotted crossing open ground. Can you make it that far? Eli asked bluntly. Maya met his gaze. I have to. We both do. They found a dense thicket in which to wait for nightfall, Maya using the time to rest and conserve her remaining strength. The fever made her thoughts slightly sluggish, but she fought against it, reviewing their extraction plan repeatedly to ensure she missed nothing. My father will want to thank you personally, Eli said as dusk approached. Once we're back. That would complicate things, Maya replied. Better if I remain unofficial. Is that what you really want? To be erased from the story? No recognition for what you've done? Maya considered the question. Recognition was never my motivation. Not for Damascus, not for this. Then what was? The job, she said simply. Completing the mission. Saving lives. Even when it costs you everything? Some things are worth the price. Maya checked her watch. It's dark enough. Time to move. They emerged from their hiding place, moving carefully across terrain that offered less and less cover as they approached the border. Maya's condition had worsened, her movements now obviously hampered by fever and pain, but she pushed forward with grim determination. The border itself was marked by a simple fence in this remote region, hardly more than a symbolic barrier. But Maya knew the real challenge would be avoiding the patrols that regularly swept the area. They paused at the edge of a clearing, watching and listening for any sign of activity ahead. The night was quiet except for the occasional distant rumble of vehicles on the main road several kilometers away. Our extraction team should be waiting about 2 kilometers beyond the border, Maya whispered. Once we cross, we use the satellite phone to signal them. Eli nodded, his expression resolute. I'm ready when you are. They moved forward in short rushes, covering open ground quickly before pausing in whatever concealment they could find. Maya's tactical awareness remained sharp, despite her physical deterioration, her instincts guiding them through potential danger zones. They had almost reached the fence when floodlights suddenly illuminated the clearing behind them. Voices called out commands in the local language, followed by the distinctive sound of weapons being readied. Border Patrol, Maya hissed. Run for the fence, now! They sprinted the final distance, abandoning stealth for speed. Eli reached the fence first, clambering over it with surprising agility. Maya followed more slowly, her injured shoulder screaming in protest as she pulled herself up and over. Gunfire erupted behind them as they dropped to the other side, bullets cutting through the air around them. Maya pushed Eli ahead of her as they ran for the tree line beyond. Keep going, she shouted. Don't stop! They crashed through undergrowth, putting distance between themselves and the border. Maya fumbled for the satellite phone, managing to activate the emergency signal that would guide their extraction team to their location. The sound of pursuit faded behind them, territorial limitations apparently preventing the border guards from crossing the fence in force. But Maya knew better than to slow down. Protocols might delay them, but determined pursuers would eventually follow. They had covered perhaps a kilometer when Maya's strength finally failed her. She stumbled, fell to one knee, and couldn't immediately rise. The fever had peaked, leaving her disoriented and weak. I need a minute, she gasped, fighting against the darkness that threatened to engulf her consciousness. Eli knelt beside her. We don't have a minute, they're still coming. Maya leaned heavily against the tree, her vision swimming with fever. You need to go, she told Eli. The extraction team will find you if you keep moving north. Follow the signal. I'm not leaving you, Eli said firmly, slipping his arm around her waist to support her weight. We finish this together. Don't be stupid, Maya hissed through gritted teeth. The mission is to get you home safely. And I say the mission parameters just changed. Something in his tone, a stubborn authority that reminded her of his father, silenced Maya's objections. Eli half carried, half dragged her forward, Maya's feet stumbling over the uneven ground as she fought to remain conscious. There, Eli whispered after they'd covered another half-kilometer. Lights ahead. Through her fever-blurred vision, Maya could make out the dim outline of vehicles waiting in a small clearing. The extraction team had arrived precisely where they should be. Could be a trap, she warned, years of training overriding even her physical deterioration. Only one way to find out, Eli replied, continuing toward the waiting vehicles. As they approached, figures emerged from the darkness, 4 operators in tactical gear, moving with the practiced efficiency Maya recognized from countless missions. The lead operator approached cautiously, weapon at the ready. Verification phrase, he demanded. Eagles fly at midnight. Eli responded with the code Maya had given him earlier. The operator nodded, then turned his attention to Maya. His face registered shock beneath his tactical helmet. Commander Reid, is that you? Maya struggled to focus on the familiar voice. Jackson? Yes, ma'am. The operator lowered his weapon and stepped forward to support her other side. Let's get you both out of here. They hurried toward the waiting vehicles, 2 unmarked SUVs with reinforced chassis and darkened windows. The kind of transportation used for deniable operations in hostile territory. Extraction Team Alpha Secure. Jackson reported into his radio as they loaded Maya into the rear of the lead vehicle. Package is safe. Plus, 1 wounded. Maya felt hands examining her shoulder, cutting away the blood-soaked bandage to assess the damage. Someone inserted an IV line into her arm, cool fluid flowing into her veins and beginning to combat the dehydration that had worsened her condition. She needs a hospital, Eli insisted from somewhere nearby. Negative, Maya managed to say, fighting through the fog that threatened to engulf her consciousness. No hospitals. Too many questions. Field medical station at the safe house, Jackson confirmed. 40 minutes away. We've got a combat medic on standby. The vehicles moved out, accelerating smoothly as they left the border zone behind. Maya felt the familiar sensation of extraction, the gradual easing of tension as danger receded, the strange mix of exhaustion and elation that accompanied successful missions. But this mission wasn't like her others. She wasn't returning to her team, to debriefings and after-action reports. She was heading toward an uncertain future where her actions would remain officially unacknowledged, her service record still marked with dishonor despite what she'd accomplished. Maya drifted in and out of consciousness as the vehicles traveled along increasingly better roads. Her fever dreams mixed past and present, the Damascus extraction bleeding into Eli's rescue, faces of teammates both old and new appearing before her. She awoke fully when the vehicles stopped, finding herself being carried into a nondescript farmhouse surrounded by security measures visible only to trained eyes. Motion sensors disguised as garden ornaments, cameras hidden in birdhouses, reinforced doors behind rustic exteriors. Inside, the rural facade gave way to a fully equipped operational center. Communications equipment, weapons racks, medical supplies, everything needed for a covert team operating behind enemy lines. Get her to the med bay, Jackson ordered, directing the operators carrying Maya's stretcher. The next hours passed in a blur of medical procedures. The combat medic cleaned and properly closed her wound, administered powerful antibiotics, and replaced the fluid she'd lost. The fever began to recede, leaving Maya exhausted but increasingly lucid. She was resting in a makeshift recovery room when the door opened and Eli entered. He'd showered and changed into clean clothes, the visible evidence of his captivity washed away. But his eyes still carried the weight of his experience, a new gravity that hadn't been there before. "How are you feeling?" he asked, sitting in the chair beside her bed. "Better," Maya admitted. "The infection's responding to treatment. I'll live." She studied him carefully. "You've been debriefed?" Eli nodded. "They've contacted Washington. Transport's being arranged to get me home." "Good." Maya shifted slightly, wincing as the movement pulled at her stitches. "Mission accomplished." "Not quite," Eli said, his expression turning serious. "We need to talk about what happens next." Maya's guard immediately went up. "Nothing happens next. You go home. I disappear." That was the arrangement. "I've been thinking about that," Eli said carefully. "It doesn't sit right with me." "It's not about what sits right with you," Maya replied, more sharply than she'd intended. "It's about operational security and political reality. My father deserves to know who saved his son." "Your father knows exactly who I am and what I did," Maya countered. "That's why he allowed this unofficial operation in the first place. But officially acknowledging it would create diplomatic problems he can't afford." Eli leaned forward, his expression determined. "What if there was another way?" A way for you to be recognized without creating those problems? Maya sighed, too tired for political maneuvering. There isn't. Not in this situation. Quote, there could be, Eli insisted, if the story changed slightly. Before Maya could respond, the door opened again. Jackson stood in the doorway, his expression uncharacteristically tense. Commander Reid, we have a situation. Satellite surveillance shows Azovistani forces massing at the border. They're claiming an illegal American military incursion and threatening international incidents. Maya pushed herself upright, despite the pain. How bad? Bad enough that Washington's worried. They're demanding explanations from your father, Jackson said, looking at Eli. And they've provided evidence. Security footage from the compound showing an American operative. Me, Maya said flatly. Jackson nodded. They're calling it an act of war. Maya closed her eyes briefly, processing this development. This complicates the extraction. They'll be watching all official channels now. It's worse than that, Jackson said. They've identified you by name. They're demanding your surrender as a war criminal. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Maya had expected complications, but not this level of exposure. Not her name being broadcast internationally as a rogue operator. How? She finally asked. How did they ID me so quickly? Jackson looked uncomfortable. We're not sure. Intelligence is working on it. But the prevailing theory is that someone inside our operation leaked information. A mole? Eli asked, visibly shocked. Or just someone who thought they were following orders, Maya said quietly. She'd seen it before. Operations compromised because different agencies had different agendas, different masters to serve. Regardless, Jackson continued, it changes our extraction plan. We can't move you through official channels now, and we can't keep you here indefinitely. Maya nodded, her tactical mind already working through options. What about Eli? Has his presence been confirmed? No, Jackson replied. As far as we can tell, they only have you on camera. The president's son is still officially missing. Quote. Then his extraction proceeds as planned, Maya decided. Get him home. And what about you? Eli demanded. Maya met his gaze steadily. I'll find another way out. That's not acceptable, Eli said firmly. I'm not leaving you to take the fall for rescuing me. You don't have a choice, Maya replied. This is bigger than either of us now. Jackson cleared his throat. Actually, there might be another option. I received communication from Director Harlow 20 minutes ago. Maya's eyebrows raised in surprise. Harlow's involved directly now? Yes, ma'am. And he's proposed a rather unconventional solution. Let's hear it, Maya said, preparing herself for whatever political machination Harlow had concocted. He suggests we leak a different story to the international press, one that contradicts the Azovistani claims and provides an alternative explanation for your presence. Maya frowned. What kind of story? That you're part of a joint international task force investigating humanitarian abuses in the region. Your presence at the compound was part of that investigation, not a military operation. That's thin, Maya objected. They have footage of me extracting a hostage. Not a hostage, Jackson corrected. A witness, someone who had been detained illegally and was assisting your investigation. Maya considered the proposal skeptically. And who exactly is supposed to back up this fiction? The UN hasn't authorized any such task force. Not the UN, Jackson replied. A coalition of concerned nations operating with the blessing of Azovistan's neighbors, all of whom have their own reasons to undermine the current regime. The political maneuvering was impressive, Maya had to admit. Harlow was attempting to reframe her unauthorized military operation as an authorized multinational investigation, thereby neutralizing the, quote, act of war accusation while simultaneously building international pressure against Azovistan. It might work, she acknowledged reluctantly, but it still leaves me exposed as the face of this operation. That's the trade-off, Jackson said. You get official cover, but you also become the public face of this mission. Which means I can never go back to covert operations, Maya concluded. My usefulness in the field would be over. The realization hit harder than she'd expected. Despite her discharge, despite everything that had happened in Damascus, Maya had still thought of herself as an operator, someone who worked in the shadows, who completed missions no one would ever know about. Maya's prepared answer came smoothly. I served in the United States military for 12 years before transitioning to international human rights work. My background gives me the skills necessary to operate in dangerous regions, but this was a humanitarian mission, not a military operation. Another reporter stood. Is it true that you were discharged from the military for disobeying orders during a previous mission? This question was expected but still stung. My military service record is a matter of public record. However, my current work with the International Task Force is entirely separate from my previous career. The questions continued, probing for weaknesses in the narrative, seeking contradictions or admissions. Maya handled them with the same precision she'd once applied to military operations, neither confirming nor denying specific details while maintaining the overall framework of the cover story. When the press conference ended, Maya was escorted to a private room where Director Harlow waited. He looked exactly as she remembered, tall, stern, with the careful expression of a man who had spent decades navigating political minefields. "Nicely done," he said as the door closed behind them. "Very convincing." "I've had good training in maintaining cover stories," Maya replied. Harlow nodded. "Your conditions have been met. The President has signed the paperwork. Your discharge has been upgraded to honorable, with full benefits and back pay." "And the others? The ones from Damascus?" "Citations for valor, as requested. Their personnel files have been amended to reflect their actions accurately." Maya felt a weight lift that she'd carried for 6 months. Her team from Damascus would finally receive the recognition they deserved, even if they never knew she had fought for it. "What happens now?" she asked. "That depends on you," Harlow replied. "This task force cover story can be short-lived or long-term. Your choice." Maya considered the options carefully. "And if I wanted to make it real? Not just a cover story?" Harlow looked surprised. "You want to actually investigate humanitarian abuses?" "That's not what I expected." "I joined the military to make a difference," Maya said simply. "To protect people who couldn't protect themselves. Maybe there's more than one way to do that." "I'll have to make some calls," Harlow said thoughtfully. "Create an actual organizational structure, secure funding. It would take time." "I have time," Maya replied, "and it would give meaning to the fiction we've created." Harlow studied her with new interest. "You continue to surprise me, Commander Reid." "Not Commander anymore," Maya corrected. "Just Maya now." "We'll see about that," Harlow said enigmatically. "The President has requested a private meeting with you once things settle down. I think he may have other ideas about your future." Before Maya could respond, there was a knock at the door. An aide entered and handed Harlow a note. He read it quickly, his expression changing subtly. "What is it?" Maya asked. "Intelligence just intercepted communications from Azovistan," Harlow replied. "It appears the regional governor who authorized your targeting has been removed from power. Rather permanently, according to the report." "The neighbors making their move?" Harlow nodded. "Taking advantage of the international scrutiny our little press conference generated. The balance of power is shifting." Maya absorbed this information, understanding its significance. The mission that had begun as a simple extraction had cascaded into regional political change. Actions and consequences, rippling outward in ways she couldn't have anticipated. "One more thing," Harlow added, reaching into his briefcase. He withdrew an envelope and handed it to her. "From your former team. They asked me to deliver it personally." Maya accepted the envelope with surprise. "You've been in contact with them?" "They've been following your situation closely." "More closely than regulations technically allow." She opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a simple card, signed by every member of her former Delta Force team. The message was brief, but powerful. Damascus was the right call. So was this one. "Welcome back." Maya stared at the signatures, emotion threatening to overwhelm her carefully maintained composure. These were the people whose opinions truly mattered to her, The operators who understood the impossible choices and split-second decisions that defined their work. "Thank you," she said quietly, tucking the card away. Harlow checked his watch. "We should go. Your transport is waiting." Quote. As they walked toward the exit, Maya realized that for the first time in 6 months, she was walking toward something rather than away from it. Not the same life she'd had before. That was gone forever. But something new. Something with purpose. "You know," Harlow said as they reached the door, "the president mentioned something interesting when we were discussing your case." "What's that?" He said, "Sometimes the people who aren't supposed to be anywhere are exactly the ones who need to be everywhere." Harlow glanced at her. "Sound familiar?" Maya smiled slightly. Eli might have mentioned that philosophy to him. "It's not bad, as philosophies go," Harlow admitted, "especially for someone in your unique position." As they stepped outside into the sunlight, Maya felt the weight of her choices, both past and present, settle into something manageable. Something she could carry forward rather than be crushed beneath. She had saved lives in Damascus, saved Eli in Azovistan, and perhaps helped save countless others through the changes now unfolding in the region. Not because she followed orders, but because she followed something more fundamental. The conviction that doing right mattered more than doing what was expected. It had cost her everything once, but standing here now, moving toward a new purpose rather than running from an old one, Maya Reid knew some prices were worth paying. Some missions worth undertaking, regardless of the personal cost. Because in the end, it wasn't about recognition or rank or even redemption. It was about being the person who acted when others wouldn't. The one who went where others couldn't. The soldier who understood that sometimes the most important orders were the ones you gave yourself. 6 months after the Azovistan operation, Maya Reid stood on the balcony of her Georgetown apartment, watching rain cascade over Washington, D.C. The capital looked different to her now, less a symbol of bureaucracy that had ended her military career, and more a complex ecosystem she was learning to navigate with new purpose. Her phone vibrated with a message from Director Harlow. "Meeting moved to 1400. POTUS will attend." Maya sighed. Presidential involvement meant higher stakes, more scrutiny, and likely more compromise. In the months since Eli Harrison's rescue, she had built something real from the fiction they'd created. The International Task Force on Humanitarian Rights in Contested Territories was now a functioning organization with 16 operatives across 3 continents. What had begun as a cover story had become Maya's redemption and second chance. But redemption, she had learned, came with its own complications. She dressed carefully in the dark blue suit that had become her unofficial uniform, professional enough for government meetings, practical enough for field work when necessary. The shoulder holster beneath her jacket carried a Glock 19, a habit she couldn't break despite her new civilian status. Her phone rang as she was leaving the apartment. "Reid," she answered, not recognizing the number. "Commander." The voice brought her up short. Colonel Matheson, her former commanding officer in Delta Force. "Been a while." Maya paused in the hallway, memories flooding back. "Colonel, this is unexpected. Figured it was time we talked. Heard you're doing good work these days." "Different work," Maya corrected. "But yes, it has its moments. That's actually why I'm calling. There's a situation developing in Senegal. Complicated. Political. The kind where conventional military operations aren't an option, but humanitarian concerns provide potential cover." Maya understood immediately. "You're looking for a back channel. Let's just say some of us in the Pentagon recognize the value of your unique position. Neither fully military nor fully civilian. Operating with international authority but American interests at heart." It was exactly the role Maya had carved out for herself, the gray space between official policy and necessary action, the place where lives could be saved when politics prevented direct intervention. "I'm listening," she said, stepping back into her apartment and closing the door. Matheson outlined the situation. American intelligence assets trapped in a deteriorating political crisis. Conventional extraction impossible due to diplomatic sensitivities. The kind of scenario that had once been handled by her Delta Force team. "My task force isn't a military unit," Maya pointed out. "We investigate human rights abuses. We don't run combat operations." "Of course," Matheson agreed smoothly. "But if your investigators happen to be in the region documenting the crisis, and if they happen to encounter American citizens in danger, The implication was clear. Maya's task force could provide the cover for what was essentially a military extraction, all while maintaining official deniability. "I'd need to run this by Harlow," she said cautiously. "Already done. This comes with his blessing, provided you're willing." Maya wasn't surprised. Harlow had always understood the value of unofficial channels. It was why he'd supported her mission to rescue Eli, even while officially ordering her to stand down. "Send me the details," she decided. "I'll see what we can do." "Knew we could count on you, Reid." Matheson's voice carried genuine respect. "Some of us always believed you got a raw deal after Damascus." "Ancient history," Maya replied, though the acknowledgement meant more than she would admit. "I'll be in touch." She ended the call and checked her watch. Still time to make Harlow's meeting, though she suspected she now knew part of what it would be about. The Senegal situation would require careful handling, selecting the right operatives, establishing believable cover, coordinating with intelligence assets on the ground. As she drove through Washington's rain-slick streets, Maya reflected on the strange circle her life had taken. She had lost everything for disobeying orders to save lives in Damascus. Now she was being unofficially asked to do exactly that kind of work again, but with the tacit blessing of the same system that had once cast her out. The White House security checkpoint was familiar now. The guards nodded in recognition as she presented her credentials, no longer surprised to see the woman whose face had briefly dominated international news during the Azovistan crisis. Harlow was waiting in the West Wing corridor, his expression unreadable as always. "Walk with me," he said by way of greeting. "The president wants to speak privately before the formal meeting." Maya matched his stride. "Matheson called. Senegal." Harlow nodded. "Thought he might." "What did you tell him?" "That I'd consider it. It's exactly the kind of gray area operation we discussed when we set up the task force." "It is," Harlow agreed. "But it also represents an escalation. Moving from investigation to extraction crosses a line." "A line we've already crossed," Maya pointed out. Azovistan wasn't just investigation. Azovistan was personal. The president's son. And this isn't personal? Americans trapped in a crisis zone? Harlow stopped walking, turning to face her directly. "I'm not arguing against it, Maya. I'm making sure you understand what accepting this request means. The Pentagon is essentially acknowledging your task force as an unofficial operational arm for missions they can't officially sanction." Maya understood the implications perfectly. They want plausible deniability with operational capability. Exactly. And once you accept that role, there will be more requests, more missions, more risk. "Isn't that why you supported this arrangement in the first place?" Maya asked. "To create a capability that exists in the spaces between official policy and necessary action?" Harlow's expression softened slightly. "Yes, but I want to ensure you're making this choice consciously, not sliding into it because it feels familiar." The concern surprised Maya. Harlow had never struck her as particularly sentimental about the welfare of his operatives. "I appreciate that," she said. "But this is exactly the work I want to be doing, saving lives when the official channels can't or won't." "The president will be pleased to hear that," Harlow said, resuming their walk. "He's taken a personal interest in your task force." They reached the Oval Office where the president was finishing a call. He motioned them in, then stood to greet Maya personally. "Ms. Reid," he said, extending his hand. "Good to see you again, Mr. President." They had met twice before, once after Eli's return, and once when the task force received its official international charter. "Please sit." He gestured to the couches arranged in the center of the room. "Director Harlow tells me you've been contacted about Senegal." Maya nodded, unsurprised that the president was directly involved. "Yes, sir. Colonel Matheson reached out this morning." "And your thoughts?" "My team can handle it," Maya said confidently. "We have the right personnel and the international standing to operate in the region without raising diplomatic concerns." The president nodded thoughtfully. The situation there is delicate. Traditional military intervention would create complications we can't afford right now. Which is exactly why my task force is the right approach, Maya agreed. We can move under humanitarian cover while executing the extraction. Just like Azovistan, the president said, a hint of warmth entering his voice. Eli asks about you, you know. He's become quite the advocate for international humanitarian law since his return. The mention of Eli brought a slight smile to Maya's face. They had stayed in contact after his rescue, his perspective on international relations permanently altered by his experience as a hostage and his observations of Maya's approach to the mission. He's mentioned some interest in joining the task force after he completes his graduate program, Maya said. Yes, he's discussed that with me as well. The president's expression was unreadable. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about my son following in your operational footsteps, Ms. Reid. With respect, sir, I think Eli has already demonstrated he has the right instincts for this kind of work. His actions during the extraction showed remarkable composure under pressure. The president nodded slowly. Perhaps. But that's a discussion for another time. He returned to the matter at hand. The Senegal situation needs immediate attention. How quickly can your team deploy? 48 hours, Maya replied. We already have 2 investigators in neighboring Mali who can establish initial presence while the extraction team moves into position. Good. The president stood, signaling the end of the private conversation. The formal briefing will cover the operational details. I simply wanted to confirm personally that you were willing to take this on. May I ask why, sir? Maya's directness was something the president had come to expect from her. Because this represents a significant expansion of your task force's role, he replied honestly. Moving from investigation to extraction creates precedent. Once that door is opened, it won't easily close. I understand that, Mr. President. It's a responsibility I'm willing to accept. I believed you would be. He smiled slightly. You've built something important, Ms. Reid. Something that fills a critical gap in our capabilities. The ability to act when policy constraints might otherwise force inaction. Isn't that what got me court-martialed in the first place? Maya couldn't help asking. The president's expression turned serious. The difference is context and authority. What you did in Damascus was right morally, but wrong procedurally. You acted outside the chain of command. Now we've created a structure that allows for necessary action within an authorized framework, even if that framework exists in diplomatic gray areas. Plausible deniability with moral clarity, Maya summarized. Exactly. The president extended his hand again. Good luck in Senegal, Ms. Reid. Bring our people home. 3 weeks later, Maya stood on the tarmac at Andrews Air Force Base as a nondescript government jet taxied toward them. The extraction had been successful. 4 intelligence officers safely removed from deteriorating conditions in Dakar without a single shot fired. The official story involved documentation of human rights concerns and the coincidental evacuation of American citizens who happened to be in the area. Beside her, Harlow watched impassively as the plane came to a stop. Clean operation, he commented. The diplomatic fallout has been minimal. Jackson deserves most of the credit, Maya replied, referring to her former Delta Force teammate who now served as her operations chief. His team executed perfectly. The plane's door opened, and the extraction team descended the stairs, followed by the 4 intelligence officers they'd rescued. Maya felt the familiar satisfaction of a completed mission. Lives saved, objectives achieved, all without the political complications that would have accompanied an official military operation. The Pentagon is impressed, Harlow noted. 3 more requests have already come across my desk. Maya wasn't surprised. Success bred demand. Let me guess. Yemen, Venezuela, and somewhere in Central Asia. Harlow raised an eyebrow. Your intelligence network is improving. It's not intelligence, it's pattern recognition. Those are all places where we have interests but can't officially operate. Correct. And the requests aren't just from defense. State Department and CIA both want to discuss possible cooperation. The scope of what Maya had built was expanding faster than even she had anticipated. What had begun as a cover story to explain an unauthorized rescue had evolved into a legitimate international organization, and now was becoming a crucial operational capability for situations that fell between the cracks of conventional response options. "We'll need more personnel," Maya said thoughtfully, "and better support structures." "Already in the works," Harlow assured her. "The president has authorized expanded funding through channels that won't attract congressional scrutiny." Maya watched as Jackson approached, his expression reflecting the satisfaction of successful mission completion. He had been one of the first to join her task force, bringing with him a core group of former operators who understood the unique requirements of working in the spaces between official policy and necessary action. "Package delivered," he reported simply. "All 4 assets secure and debriefing has commenced." "Any complications we should be aware of?" Maya asked. "Nothing significant. Local authorities accepted our humanitarian credentials without question. The extraction itself went exactly according to plan." Jackson paused. "It felt good, Commander. Like the old days, but with better backing." Maya understood exactly what he meant. The missions they ran now had the same operational complexity as their military work, but without the rigid constraints that had sometimes prevented them from doing what needed to be done. They operated with clear moral purpose and tacit official support, while maintaining the flexibility to adapt to changing circumstances without waiting for orders from above. "Get some rest," she told him. "Briefing tomorrow at 0900. Jackson nodded and moved off to join his team. Harlow checked his watch. "The president would like an update when you're ready. No rush. He understands you've been coordinating around the clock." "I can brief him this evening," Maya offered, "after I've reviewed the full after-action reports." "Good." Harlow studied her for a moment. 6 months ago, you were a disgraced former operator with no future in government service. Now you're briefing the president directly on operations of national significance. Life takes unexpected turns," Maya replied, thinking of the path that had led her here. "From court-martial to redemption, from disgrace to purpose." "Indeed, it does." Harlow gestured toward the waiting SUV. "I'll drive you back to headquarters." As they left the airfield, Maya's phone buzzed with a message from Eli. "Heard the Senegal operation was successful. Well done. Still interested in that position when I graduate." Maya smiled slightly. Eli Harrison had been transformed by his captivity and rescue, finding purpose in the same mission that had given Maya her second chance. His experience had shown him the importance of having people willing to act when others wouldn't. People who understood that sometimes the most important rules were the unwritten ones that guided conscience rather than policy. "Problem?" Harlow asked, noticing her expression. "No," Maya replied, tucking the phone away. "Just a reminder of why we do this work." Later that evening, after briefing the president and reviewing plans for their next 3 operations, Maya returned to her Georgetown apartment. The rain had stopped, leaving the city gleaming under streetlights. From her balcony, the monuments and government buildings that had once represented her failure now symbolized something different, the complex system she had learned to navigate in service of a higher purpose. Her phone rang, a secure line used only for operational matters. "Reid," she answered. "Commander, it's Jackson. Sorry to disturb you after hours, but we've received intelligence about a developing situation in Myanmar. Ethnic cleansing operations have trapped approximately 60 aid workers in a remote village. Local military forces are 12 hours out." Maya was already moving to her laptop. "Official response? State Department is working diplomatic channels, but the Myanmar government is denying any operations in the region. UN Security Council is deadlocked due to Chinese opposition to intervention. The familiar pattern, diplomatic constraints preventing official action while lives hung in the balance. Exactly the scenario for which her task force had been created. Assemble the rapid response team," Maya directed. "I'll contact Harlow for authorization." "Already done," Jackson replied. "He says it's your call." Maya paused, feeling the weight of that authority. 6 months ago, she had been court-martialed for making exactly this kind of decision. Now she was explicitly empowered to make it, to determine when and how to act, when official channels were constrained by politics or procedure. "Wheels up in 90 minutes, she decided. "I'll meet you at the airfield." Quote. As she gathered her go-bag and equipment, Maya reflected on the strange symmetry of her journey. She had lost everything because she refused to stand by when lives could be saved. Now she had built something that existed precisely to ensure no one would ever have to make that choice again. A capability that bridged the gap between what was officially possible and what was morally necessary. Her phone buzzed with another message from Eli. "Father mentioned the Myanmar situation. Anything I can do to help?" Maya considered her response carefully, then typed, "Keep advocating for the work. Sometimes the people who aren't supposed to be anywhere are exactly the ones who need to be everywhere." It had become something of a mantra for her task force, a reminder that their unique position outside normal channels wasn't a limitation but a strength. They operated in the shadows not to avoid accountability, but to provide capability when conventional responses fell short. As she left her apartment, Maya carried with her the lessons of Damascus, of Azovistan, of every mission where doing the right thing had required moving beyond conventional boundaries. She had learned that true service sometimes meant making difficult choices, that saving lives occasionally required risking everything, and that redemption often came in forms you never expected. The disgraced commander had become something new, neither fully military nor fully civilian, neither completely official nor entirely deniable. She occupied the necessary middle ground, the space where action remained possible when policy dictated restraint, where lives could be saved when politics said they couldn't. And in that space, Maya Reid had found not just redemption but purpose, not just a second chance, but a new mission. She had transformed her disgrace into something meaningful, a capability that embodied the very principles for which she had originally been punished. As she drove toward the airfield where her team waited, Maya knew that whatever happened in Myanmar and beyond, she was exactly where she needed to be, doing exactly what she had always been meant to do, saving lives when no one else could. And in the end, that was all that had ever mattered. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.